In a minute, I'm going to read out an opinion piece from the newspaper. But before I do that, a little disclaimer or reflection. In doing this, in criticising this columnist, I'm very well aware that I run the risk of sort of blocking myself from being able to ever contribute to the newspaper. Um, you know, as someone with opinions, I've often looked at dabbling into the world of journalism and having my own op-eds and so on. And obviously, the way to do that is to pitch to newspapers. So I'm aware that by attacking one of the key columnists in the national paper, I might rule myself out of ever getting a voice there. And that's a risk I'll just have to take because the alternative is just to keep quiet and never to voice my opinions lest I offend someone. But this is one where I think it's about time it needs to be called out because the person in question, I'm talking about Kate Lister, she is constantly bashing men, and I'm a little bit fed up with it as a man. Um, it really seems like I get the eye regularly. It really seems like every other column she has some angle taking a swipe at men, and she's quite subtle about it. She always kind of masquerade it as a humorous thing or something like that. But I think, if as a society we say misogyny is wrong and misogyny should be called out, I don't see why misandry should get a free pass. And I'm tired of people like her getting away with it. She describes herself as a sexpert, a sex historian, and a feminist. And what I'm going to do is read out the whole piece because I don't want to be accused of taking it out of context. But there is a particular thing in this that I guarantee if a male writer said something similar, he would absolutely be cancelled. He would probably lose his job. He'd probably face angry protests. He'd be branded a misogynist dinosaur. It just would not stand. Yet she gets away with it. Um, I think she needs to be called out for it. And I like Kate Lister to explain how she justifies this sort of dehumanizing language. And I'm going to talk about I'm going to mention explicitly the bit I'm talking about, but I will read out her whole piece just so I'm not accused of taking it out of context. And this is what I'm going to read out. It's a little bit lengthy, so bear with me. This is from the 6th of November. It's about the subject of online dating. It's hard enough to date in 2025, but being a sexpert has made it impossible. Well, Kate Lister whining about finding it hard to date. I wondered if she ever consider it's because she never stops complaining about men. Just a thought. Anyway, dating in the modern world is like volunteering for a work sports day. Most of the good events are taken by the time you get there, and what is left over will inevitably ask you to tie your legs together and wear a silly outfit to get over the finish line. When it comes to finding sensible people to date, I am facing so many hurdles that I think it's time to just quit the race entirely. So far, no big issue there. Seriously, how is anyone still dating in 2025? Where do you go to meet prospective dates? Time was when you would meet someone at the local pub or while you were half cut doing the Macarena in some dodgy nightclub. But pubs are closing at a rate of one a day in the UK and nobody is going clubbing anymore. Office romances are now broadly discouraged, and even if they were an option, I work from home and I am self employed. When I was in my 30s, the dating pool was very shallow because most men around me were in committed relationships. The nice thing about dating in your 40s is that this is the time when people tend to get divorced, so there's a glut of age appropriate newly single men on the market. And this is what she writes afterwards. But recently divorced men can be a bit like radioactive waste. Highly unstable for a long time and best left alone. So they're out. Now, I'll continue the rest of her piece, but this is very important. She's describing fellow human beings as radioactive waste. Just imagine for a second a male writer describing women that he deems to be undateable as radioactive waste. I think that's abhorrent. I think it's blatantly sexist, and I'm calling out Kate Lister for it. Kate Lister, how do you justify that sort of language? Calling men radioactive waste because they're divorced? You don't know the reasons they're divorced. There could be a variety of reasons for that. So I think that's disgusting. I think it's utterly sexist, and I maintain that if a male writer wrote something like that about women, it wouldn't stand. So why does she get away with it? I'll continue her piece. Because here's the irony. I'll continue after making this point. Um, I don't disagree with absolutely everything she's saying. She is right that online dating is difficult. She is right that there's complexities around it. I don't disagree with that. I've had my experience of online dating. But she has to be so polarizing by coming out with such a hateful and sexist way to describe men that she deems undateable. Radioactive waste. And she's trying to gloss it up as like, oh, it's witty, it's humorous. Just imagine if the situation was reversed and a male writer wrote like that about women. I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think it's funny, and I don't think it's smart either. Because for one thing, it's generalizing all divorced men. It's implying that they're all the same. It's a very damaging smear, I think. So I'll just continue her piece. I find dating apps to be a colossal waste of energy. You can spend weeks stuck in the talking phase of texting until you finally meet and realise this is a no-go. The apps are a magnet for time wasters, angry men brandishing fish, and married people looking for an ego boost. Angry men. Yeah, well, obviously as a woman she will experience the male side of it, but I can tell you I experienced plenty of time wasters as well when I was online dating. There's plenty of women out there who waste time. So why the sexist double standard? She should say people. She should use neutral terms. However, it's becoming clear that one thing has made me all but undateable, my job. I research sex for a living. I publish columns and books on the topic, and twice a week release a podcast on the history of sex. If you Google me, and they do, the word sex comes up. I have a profile as a sex historian, and ironically, the more I write about and research sex, the less I have of it. You would think that expertise in such an area would mean I was beating off prospective suitors on my doorstep, so to speak, but alas, this is not the case, or at least not with the kind of people you would want to show an interest. Well, it seems to me, and I'll continue her piece, I'm not going to admit anything, and I'll be fair in reading out all of it. It seems to me that, she's complaining about not being able to find a good date, but she spends a lot of her time whining about men. And the men that she does seem to attract seem to be dodgy kinds. So, what does that say? Um, my inboxes are full of emails from confused, horny men who hear the word sex and immediately think that this must mean I want to have sex with them. Well, those guys are deluded if they think a misandrist like Kate Lister is a hot option. I certainly don't. I wouldn't give her the time of day. If I wanted to date someone who sends women they don't know pictures of their penis, I am spoilt for choice. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in this demographic, which reduces my options even further. I refuse to believe that most men on dating sites behave this way. There will be some that do that, and it is crude and delusional and all the rest of it. Um, but she has to wonder why she's putting off other men. And I think the fact that she fails to introspect on that is quite telling. I mean, could it be something to do with the fact you never stop complaining about men, Kate Lister? Because every other report she comes out with has an anti-male angle. Something strange happens when you tell people that you research sex for a living. I imagine police officers and tax inspectors get the same kind of reaction when they disclose what they do. Mild panic as if I'm going to judge them or catch them out. The disclosure is normally followed by a nervous laugh and a joke about, I hope you're not going to study me. I've had some dates who have discovered this column and then worry I might be using them as some kind of case study for an article. Well, you probably are, to be honest. You probably are. Unless I produce a recording device before the entrees arrive, this is rarely the case. Then there are those who learn what I do and assume that I must be some kind of sex ninja, and that fourth base with me is a foregone conclusion. All they have to do is turn up and buy me a drink, which might well be true, but not for the reasons they think. I once had to cancel a date because he told me he had been bragging to everyone at the office that he was meeting up with a sexpert. I hadn't even met him, and he was already focused on what I do rather than who I am. You mean a little bit like you judge divorced men when you don't know them individually? Interesting. Um, let's see. I'm telling you, the mere mention of sex early doors, the mere mention of sex early doors can have a catastrophic impact, on the composure of your average man on a date. Sexologist isn't the only profession that can complicate your love life. I have a doctor friend who finds it all but impossible to date because every romantic encounter turns into an impromptu health assessment. She once showed me photographs of skin tags that a Tinder match had sent her to ask if she thought they might be cancerous. However, there is research which shows that those who work in sex related industries or who study sex for a living do encounter significant stigma. One 2015 paper found that despite growing acceptance of the academic study of sexuality, both women and men perceive various types of problematic workplace experiences on the subject of their research. Such experiences included being marginalised, overly sexualised, not being taken seriously, and being passed over for promotion. And that's within the hallowed halls of academia. Women on Bumble stand no chance. I am unsure of how to resolve my current predicament for the simple reason that it is not my problem to fix. I love what I do for a living and do not share the same reservations about the topic that others do. I don't find it shocking or titillating or taboo. It's just Tuesday to me. Ultimately, I cannot control men's reaction to what I write about, but nonetheless, I feel deeply frustrated that I have to deal with it. Well, what about men having to deal with your misandry? You know, getting a piece in a national newspaper, getting to spout out your bigotry day after day. Is this simply the fate of all singletons who publicly talk about sex a lot? It's like some Greek punishment in the underworld. We are doomed to talk endlessly about other people's sex lives but rarely get to do it ourselves. Perhaps I should start my own dating app for people with jobs that can make dating tricky. Traffic wardens, psychologists, mafia dons, and so forth. I could call it unhinged. I bet I'd make a packet. Well, Kate Lister, I'm not the world expert that you are, but I've had a bit of experience of online dating. I had plenty of time wasters. I had heartache there. I had plenty of experience. I would say this though, when it comes to relationships, it's about mutual respect. And you're someone who spends a lot of your public profile basically attacking men. That's what I've seen in your columns. As a man, that's what comes across. I don't think you have much respect for men. Um, and then you have this column complaining about being single, about finding it difficult to date. I don't absolutely disagree with everything you're saying. I think that some of your points are valid. What I think is really contemptible is the fact that you smear an entire demographic, divorced men, as radioactive waste. Do you think that's acceptable language? Do you think that's productive? Do you think that is witty? It's not. It's just misandrist bigotry from what I think is probably quite a bitter feminist. It's pathetic. And unfortunately, you're getting a platform to do this. You're getting a green light to do it. The eye is giving you this platform. I think it's unfortunate, because I just don't think that you would see the same sort of article from a man at least getting away with it. Even in the right-wing tabloids, I don't think you would ever get a male columnist talking about women as radioactive waste. It's contemptible. I would say you should apologise for it, but you're not going to do that because I think you're a very arrogant individual. I think you've got very little introspection. It's always someone else's fault. It's always men. Always men to blame. Maybe you should reflect on your own attitude. Maybe stop being so anti-male. Stop blaming men for everything. Stop always whining about men. And maybe you'll find that some guys might actually give you the time of day. That's how I see it. I certainly wouldn't give you the time of day. And I think it's unfortunate that a national paper is giving you a platform, but that's up to the editor of the Eye. But yeah, I'm calling out your misandry. You're labelling men radioactive waste. That's disgusting. It's misandrist. And if, as a society, we should call out misogyny, I think misandry promoted by individuals like yourself should be called out. You're not the only one. There's some other feminist writers out there who think that it's cute or it's witty or it's smart to come out with misandrist bile. I'm calling it out for what it is. Shame on you, Kate Lister.